Morning. How are you guys doing?
Good morning, Brendan.
Hey there.
Hi. Okay. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. Do we have everyone? Let me see. Yeah.
You have a sign-in sheet?
Well, we do not, actually. Hi, are you coming in, Sam? You know what? I think we're just about ready to start, Brendan. No.
All right. Do you need any more time at all, or are you guys good?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is, I think most of you know me, but my name is Brendan Cole. I'm an RN and Senior Implementation Manager with CareEfficient. I'm going to go over an overview of the chart inside CareEfficient and the how to write orders, add medications, everything like that. To start off with, this is our login screen online. It's the ams.careefficientinc.com.
Brandon, I'm sorry, but are you able to make your screen bigger?
Yeah, I will. It does. No problem. And just, it will move boxes around, but just be aware of that.
Okay.
Okay, so when your administrators give you org access, it's your username will default to either your email address or your first initial last name, just depending on if the email was in there when they gave you web access. If you did have an email in there, then you'll get a temporary password emailed to you with your username, which would again be your email address. Just copy and paste that password into this password field. It just works a little bit better if you have any problems logging in. When you first log in, it will ask you to re-enter that temporary password and then create your own password and then confirm that, and then you'll be able to log in. Your org code will always be the same. It'll be the LMVH3106. If you forget your password, there is a forgot password link here. You would need to enter the org code and your username in it. Again, as long as you have an email address on file, it'll email you a temporary password.
Molly,
Otherwise, you'll have to go to the administrators.
he's asking, you showed him the forgot password thing.
Okay.
Brendan, my understanding was that this forgot password link, we were told that we had to reset everybody's password, and that when they've used this link, the email that they get back doesn't work.
It works, but you do have to copy and paste that password. It's just the way, I mean, even if you try to type in those special characters and numbers and everything that it gives you, even if you type it exactly, it just doesn't seem to work quite right. And I'm not sure if it's because there may be a space involved that you can't see or something. But as long as they have an email address, they can use the forgot password link, enter that information, and it should email the same welcome letter with the temporary password, copy and paste it. It should work. If it's not,
So
we need to figure out why. But
that's your password. Okay,
yeah,
well,
copy and paste
I'll
it.
I'll try it today,
Okay.
and then I'll make sure that they know that.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
It just always seems to work like that, because even with me, I'll go in there and type it in if I ever forgot mine, and type in that temporary, and it just doesn't seem to work. But if I copy and paste it, it works every single time.
Right.
And now, if there is not an email address associated with that associate, then they would have to go to the administrators to get that reset, because we won't, CareEfficient won't reset anybody but administrators' passwords if they request that. Just because we don't know, the status of that employee. Maybe they were locked out for a reason or something. So,
Sure.
So we will never do that part.
Okay,
but that's
great. And everybody has an email attached to it, so that should work then. Okay, thank you.
Good. Absolutely. Again, once you sign in that first time, it's not going to pop up on this screen, but there will be you'll get a different screen that just has you re-enter your old password, which is the temporary one, and then you add your new one in there, type it in twice to make sure they match, and then continue. Then it'll tell you you've successfully changed your password, and then continue, and it'll bring you in here to the home screen. The home screen, you can see over here on the right, there's the patient, your calendar. Every service that you guys have scheduled to you will start showing up here for each day. And of course, it could change, as scheduling is being done, so keep, checking it pretty regularly. Over here, and we'll go over more options and things that you can do on these calendars here in a minute. You might get pop-up announcements that will show up in the middle of your screen as a pop-up window. Be sure and read those. Your administrators can put those out as well as Care Efficient. The main thing with Care Efficient, with our messages, they're usually going to be involving CMS or Medicare, dark days, things like that. But we also do system enhancements, upgrades, and maintenance on usually every other Thursday. And I think it's around 10 p.m. Eastern time is when they go in the system. I just recommend saving, closing any documentation you guys have right before that time, and then you can try to go back in just a couple minutes, and then as long as you have access, you'll be okay. But if you're denied access, it shouldn't be more than a few minutes, tops. But I just recommend saving and closing just in case, because if we go in there and make changes to the system, you could potentially lose some documentation, which we wouldn't want. The other options over here, you have a reports and options link. You guys really won't be using this. I just want you to see what it is. It's different reports, and it depends on if you even have access to anything. So, of course, some of these wouldn't even work. But if you wanted to see what those reports or how to run them, those little question marks, if you click on them, it'll give you the explanation about that. I am going to mute a couple lines here, just because I was getting a little bit of noise in the background. You don't have to worry about this EVV access. You can quickly jump to different schedules or different patient encounters just by typing in the patient's name. You won't see invoices or associates. Down here towards the bottom under other actions, there is directions and mapping, which can help you plan your route for the day. You can move your visits up and down in what order you plan on going, and it will generate a map and directions for you. Typically, you guys won't need to worry about the uploaded service notes or attached uploaded service notes. That would be more for the office if there was an issue. And then you have the option for add pay only. And if your agency chooses to use educational documents and they set it up in the system under their organization, then those documents would be available through this educational documents link. One of the fastest ways to get to a patient encounter is going to be to click on the patient's name. You're going to get a little pop-up menu. This is where we're going to add scheduling notes, and I'll tell you that here in a minute, how we'll add our service note, which is the page service note assessment. You can also view or print blank service notes by doing this, but be aware if you do that, it will print the patient's name, date of service, your name at the top of the service note if you were to do that. If you have permissions to edit services, that would be to edit the service code. Typically, you guys won't need to worry about that. But then view patient encounter will take you directly to the patient encounter, or view patient schedule will take you to the patient schedule. So those are quick links to do that, and I just accidentally clicked on this schedule. So if you go to the patient encounter, click on the patient encounter link there, then it'll just take you directly into your patient encounter. There's another way you can search for patient encounters, is just go to the patient menu up at the top, click on patient encounters. This is going to give you a list of all the agencies you have access to and the patients. It will default to the active, hold, and pending patients, but if you needed to look at a discharged encounter, non-admin encounter, or anything else, you could filter to the specific encounter types. You can also search for the patient's name up here at the top, medical record number, date of birth, and the patient identifier if you needed to. Or you can just scroll through that list and find them.
Brendan?
Brendan, we have a question.
Hi, Brendan, it's Leslie. In that search box, you just typed test. We'll have patients with a very common last name, and we want to be able to search, like, let's say the last name is Smith, comma, John.
I've done that and it doesn't seem to like, after I do Smith, I hit the comma and I start to type the name John and I hit search, it gives me nothing. And I'm just wondering what.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to, it's going to search first or last name.
You
so
can't do a comment because like, I mean, we probably have had 20 John Smiths or, 20 Maria Garcias, and you got to start going by middle initial. And so you can only search by first or last name?
Correct. Or any of this other information, the date of birth, MRN, or the patient identifier. But yeah, that's on this field here. It's only first or last name.
And then you just have to hunt, huh? Does it bring up the most recent cert period at the top?
Well,
Or is it alphabetical?
it will do it alphabetically. Well, it's obviously these aren't all alphabetical here. Well, mostly it is. Yeah, except for, this one's backwards. That's why. But yeah, it's alphabetical.
But
The matching last name, everything that matches that text that you enter up here will be highlighted, and it'll show you that information. But yeah, you can filter if you're if you're looking for a specific agency, you can start fine tuning those, but you would see the list of all of them, and it will show you their benefit period.
Can you go and show them?
We don't have any of that.
Brandon,
We have nothing.
can you hang on just a minute and could you slow down because we're having a few issues over here on people's calendar looking different.
Yeah, there's stuff. It just depends on what it's looking like, but of course they're only going to see encounters for the agencies that they have assigned to them for those associates, as well as there are rules if they.
These are actually real patients now. This is your.
If there's
That's your search right there that he's talking about. So we got there.
Well, no, her calendar didn't have any practice patients on there.
there is a role permission that if you guys aren't seeing the patients that, like all of the patients maybe that I'm seeing, there's one that's called do not restrict patients served. So if it's turned off, then you're only going to see patients' names that you have a visit assigned to you under. So if you're not seeing all the patient names, it could be because of that rule on the roll, permission on the roll.
Should be, okay.
Yeah, I think
we're good.
I think it's better.
I think we're good. There were some issues with some of the clinicians not being assigned a practice patient. So,
Okay, I'm sorry.
okay, so Brendan, if you could move forward now, just if you could slow down a little.
Okay, I'm sorry. So if you do search this way to find a patient, to get into their encounter, just click on the patient's name. Like I said, it's easiest just to do it from your home screen, but sometimes you may not have a visit scheduled, or you don't know where it's at and don't want to dig through every month trying to find it. So it's sometimes easier to go up here and go to the patient encounter and filter through that patient. And then once you find your patient, just click on the patient's name, and then it does take you into the encounter. So this is what our encounter looks like. This is the patient chart. You'll see up here at the top the patient's name in big bold letters, the patient phone number. If you hover over the little address books, you will get their address as well as additional phone numbers, but their preferred number will show up here to the right. You'll see the doctor's name, primary physician's phone, and again, if you hover over that, you can get all the additional phone numbers. Their allergies, if there has been any updated in the patient encounter, you'll see those here. You can see important notes. Those would actually be entered on the note tab, but you'll see that up here, up at the top. And then if there's multiple, you can click on the little magnifying glass next to that, and it'll show you all those additional important notes. Everything up here at the top, you're going to see no matter what tab you're in down below. You're also going to see what agency they're in, their start of care date, primary diagnosis, if they have more than one diagnosis, and you can click on the little magnifying glass icon, and it'll show you all the additional diagnosis codes. Their disaster level will be displayed up here, their advanced directive narrative, the status of the patient encounter. So you'll have different options or different statuses, whether it's a non-admit, an active patient, a pending patient, patients on hold, or patients discharged. You'll get, or even bereavement for the hospice side, you'll see that information up here. And if they were discharged, you'd see the discharge date. Their date of birth, age, and their DNR status is all going to be up here as well. These menu options up by the patient's name, you guys aren't going to use those too often, I don't believe, but that's where you're going to, and they're going to change based off the status of the patient. So since this patient is active, we have the option to be able to discharge the patient, place the patient on hold. You can print the patient fact report. This is going to be basically their chart minus orders and minus signed orders, anything uploaded to the encounter, and service notes. They won't be included, but this will give you all the rest of that information with whatever you want included. Just put a checkbox next to it and hit export, and you'll get that patient fact report. And then there's the scheduling link. The scheduling link will take you to that that patient's calendar. So on your associate calendar on the home screen, it's only going to show visits assigned to you. But on the patient calendar, you'll see all the visits that they have and all the different disciplines. And so you can come here if the patient's asking when they're going to be seen next or something. You can be able to view this information here. To get back to the patient encounter from their schedule, just click on that patient name right here, and it'll take you right back to the encounter. Okay, so everything again up here you'll see, no matter what tab you're on. Now I'm going to go through each tab and kind of show you what information's in here. Under the Profile tab, you're going to have the personal information, which is the basic demographics for the patient, medical record number. There may be characteristics if your agency adds some. Right now we have, like armed forces, but they can add things like Spanish speaking only, or, any pertinent information that you guys might need to know about. You can add it under the characteristics so you can identify that. Under the current encounter side of the Profile tab, this is the information about this encounter. So this patient has only been admitted the one time, so it's encounter number 1. If we discharge and readmit the patient, it will increase this number to encounter number 2, and then number 3, so on and so forth. In which case, the start of care dates would be different for each time you admitted them. Their address could be different, a referral source information could be different, admission source, admission type, all of this could be different. So this will be the correct information for this encounter. So again, it does show you your start of care, referral information, admission source and type, DNR status, agency, a lot of the same information that you see up here on the top. The Contact tab on the left side is going to be the patient contact information, so their home address, their phone numbers, as many phone numbers as they have or you need to add. You can add as many as you need to. And then the patient contacts are going to be the relatives, next of kin, power of attorneys, things like that, so you can identify that information here. The Notes tab, this is internal communication about the patient, not service notes, just internal communication. So there could be different note types like directions. There's an event note. To add a note, you just click on the Add Note, select what the label that you want, such as directions or whatever. You would type in the verbiage in the note and hit Save, and then that note would show up right here. So again, there's going to be automated notes in here. So if anything's ever faxed out of this encounter, it'll create a note here, and it'll tell you who faxed it, when, and what it was they faxed. So you can view that information. And same thing, if something was uploaded to the encounter, it'll create an automated note as well. So you may end up with a lot of notes in here over the length of the patient's stay. You can filter to specific notes if you're just looking for, general notes. You can filter to that note type. If you're only looking for directions, you can filter to that. You can filter from date ranges of when that note was entered. You can search for keywords. This would search for the the verbiage you entered in the note. You can search for that. And if you have permissions, you can actually deactivate these notes if it was entered incorrectly or no longer applies to this patient, etc. And then if you needed to show inactivated notes, you can click this little checkbox by show inactive, hit search. It'll show inactive notes, and then there's a little back arrow if you wanted to make it active again. You can click on that, and it'll go back to an active status. So again, this is just internal communication about the patient. The referral tab, you won't see this on your transition patients, the patients that are on service before the go live date. They're going to be entered as a transition patient and they will not have the referral. However, if it's a brand new admission that you guys put into Care Efficient, you will see this referral tab. And so it's going to have some referral source information, referral contact information. There is a referral tracking that the office would use. And then there's some referral information down here. And they may write some, the orders in here if this has to go out and get signed. A lot of times, the patients are going to, you'll get a referral over on the fax or via a portal of some kind. And that information is actually going to be uploaded in the Documents tab, so I'll show you where to look for that too. None of this information flows anywhere. So the diagnosis codes, meds, none of this goes anywhere. It's only for the referral order purposes. So the Physician and Facility tab, this is going to show you all the doctors involved in the care. The primary physician, of course, is going to be up here at the top under the primary physician, and then all additional physicians are going to be down here below that. They do need to be added to the patient physician tab. If you're going to send or receive orders to them, they have to be here so that they show up as an option when you're choosing which doctor to send that order to. The Documents tab, it may look different if you have permissions. If you guys have permission to add forms, up here at the top section is the Forms section. This is patient forms, electronic forms. There could be a lot of different ones in here that you guys are going to use. Some of these are going to be admission agreements, photo releases, consents, and then there's your typical CMS ones like your ABN, HHCCN, your non-NOx. There's also incident reports, infection control forms that you guys can choose. To fill out a form, you're going to just click on which form type you want from the drop-down and then hit the Continue button, and it'll bring you into the form. Real quick, you'll see this in your service notes too, but if there's a circle, these are called radio buttons. These are single selects, so you only get the option to choose one or the other. Then we have text boxes that you can type in a short amount of text. The date, if it's a date, we usually set it up as a date, so you'll see the calendar, and then you can choose the date just by clicking on the date. You'd fill out this entire form. These multi-line text boxes, of these bigger looking ones, these have unlimited text capabilities, so you can type in as much as you want. And you can also drag and drop these to so you can see all of the verbiage that you guys are typing instead of just the last couple lines. These little square ones, these are multi-select, so you can select all that apply. When you finish filling out one of these forms, you would choose to apply signatures down here on the bottom left. When you click on that, it will gray out that form, because if it's a form a patient's going to sign, they're attesting that this is complete and accurate. Same thing with even the representative. So the only way you'd be able to edit this again is to remove the signatures. To add the patient or responsible party signature, click on this link here, and it will bring up a box for them to sign in if you guys have touch screen devices. If you like the signature, you can choose accept. If not, you can clear it out and have them sign it again. When you're done, just hit accept. That will apply that patient representative signature. The agency representative would be your signature. When you click on that, it is going to bring in, it's going to automatically pull your full name and discipline from your associate file and create this pretty legible cursive signature with your credentials. You could, if you wanted to, you can retype this, to your legal name or whatever it is if it needs to be different, and then hit use, and it will put that up there. You can also draw your signature. If you wanted to draw it, it would clear out this board, and you can just draw within that box. Should be legible, should have your credentials on it. Or there's even, you can upload a file of a picture of your signature, like a PNG, but those are a little bit tricky because they may be too big or too small. I don't see a lot of people using that, but there is that option there. Now, the very first time you sign anything, this is the same signature box that you're going to get anytime you sign a form, an order, a service note, anything that you med profile. If you guys sign anything, this is the same box that you guys are going to use. The very first time you sign something, it's going to default to save my signature for future use. Just leave that checked and then hit accept. And then every single time you have to sign something, it's going to remember what that last signature was, and all you have to do is hit accept. It knows by your login information who you are. Now, these are time-stamped. You don't see it right now in this view, but when they print that form off, these will be time-stamped as well. Same thing with on the service notes and stuff. Excuse me. There are different options in here. You can save and continue. As you're filling these forms out, we don't see that information until you hit save and continue, save and close, or complete. At that point, it will send us that information. Now, the forms does not have an autosave on it. Your service notes, your orders, they do. So every 7 minutes, it's going to autosave this information and send it to us no matter what, so you don't lose anything. But those are your options. If you were to hit save and close, you'll be able to see that this this note form is in an incomplete status. To complete it, again, you'd have to just click the edit button to go back inside of it, and then finish filling it out, and then you'll of course get your signatures at the end. Then you'll mark it as complete, and then that's how you add a form. It'll mark it as complete. It can be printed off and sent to the patient if it was a patient form. If it doesn't need to be printed and left with them, if it's just one of the forms that does not require a patient signature, then you can just click the print icon and view that either way. There is an option to add additional signatures. Some forms, and I think they use it in hospice, need to have multiple signatures applied to it. So you can add as many signatures as you need to each one of these forms. And that's how those work. The upload document section, you guys probably won't be uploading any documents, so I'm not going to really cover that. But you guys will probably need to view these documents. If anything that's uploaded to the patient chart is going to end up showing up here. So even if it's a signed order, if it was an uploaded service note, or like a paper service note, if there's pictures of wounds, if there's lab results that came over on the fax or that were printed off or whatever, you'll have those in here, your referral order, all that kind of stuff. Everything that's uploaded to this patient encounter will be right here. To view it, just click on the document description. It's in this orange font. If you just click on that, it will download it if it needs to download it. And it kind of depends on what the file type is and if your browser's set up to open PDFs automatically, things like that. If it was that way, when you click on it, instead of downloading it, it may open it automatically. And then there is the ability to put a checkbox next to all the files that you want to view and then download them all at the same time. So you could do that, and then it'll download every file that you choose, and you can open them up to view them. The clinical tab is where you can identify case managers, clinical managers, and their phone numbers. So if there's somebody in the office that's managing this patient, or an RN out in the field, or therapist, they can identify that information right here, so you guys can easily see who you need to call about this patient. And then there's this ability to add an entire clinical team, so you can put check boxes next to everybody involved in the care. You can identify who the primary discipline is, and then all of those names would be listed here, and then which one's the primary discipline. Doesn't have to be used, but it's available. The Specialties Skills, this kind of works works in two ways. For one, you can identify that a patient may be a pediatric patient, a wound care patient, a psychiatric patient, et cetera. So you can identify what skills these patients need, as well as you can actually assign skills to associates too. And if those skills match for an associate and then the patient, when you go to assign the visits, it moves that associate to the top of the list, makes them the best match for this patient. So it kind of works in two ways like that. You guys can track vendors. They would need to be added to the settings, but you guys can track those if needed. Their disaster plan, you're going to see that full information here. Consents and notices, that information will be here. When it's uploaded to the Documents tab and labeled as these, it will automatically update this grid. The default vitals, you guys are going to see these here. The primary or admitting associates would set these up for you. These work in two different ways as well. They will flow to your 485s, as well as if you are inside of a service note documenting their vitals and one of those ends up being outside the range, it's going to give you a little red icon with a white exclamation point in it. And if you hover over that, and I'll demonstrate this when we go to document a visit, but it'll give you the heads up and tell you what the range should be. It doesn't give you any kind of errors saying that you can't complete your note or anything, because it could truly be outside the range. But it gives you a heads up, because if this range was on a doctor's order, then you need to be notifying that doctor that those vitals are outside the perimeters and document as such. Advanced directive information is going to be in here. You guys have the options to track patient vaccinations. Different programs. Your agency may offer different specific programs that a patient may be on, and you'd be able to track that. And then also some agencies use this for community-based programs to identify if the patient's on Meals on Wheels or adult daycares and things like that. You could identify the different programs that the patient's on. And then the disciplines. Every time a discipline is ordered for a patient, it'll list that discipline here. So it's just a quick glance to see which all disciplines are involved in this patient's care. Again, most of this is just coordination of care in here, but very useful information as well. The Meds tab, I'll spend a minute on here. This is where, and this is also available inside the service notes. There's a medications tab inside your service notes, and it functions just like this. So there's no differences. The only difference is we gave you the ability to do that while you're still in your note, so you don't have to leave your note, then come to the encounter, address meds, and go back to your note. Now you can just do it all from within your note. So as I'm talking about this, just think about the fact that you'll be doing the same thing in the notes. To add a medication, you can click on Add Medication. For the entry type, if you're first adding it, it would either be new or existing. And then you would type in part or all of the spelling of the med and hit the little drop-down box. And then you're going to get all the different options. This is Lexicomp drug database, so it's it's the biggest in the country. Has almost everything you can ever think of in here, how they're manufactured and prescribed. So you do want to pick a med out of this list at all, if at all possible. There may be times that the dosages may be not exact, or they may just be, it may be provided this way, but they're going to take a half a tab instead of a full tab, things like that. So try to pick this med out of the list. If then you need to adjust the dosage here, you could go ahead and do that, or if it is like a 1/2 tab daily, you can type in that information here. That route in the dosage will pull from whatever one you pick from that drop-down list, and then, but you can address that again if needed. You type in the start date for the med. Anything with an orange asterisk like this here, those are bare minimum you have to move forward. So just make sure you answer all that appropriately. You do have the option to track whether or not it's alternative, herbal, over-the-counter, or prescription, who prescribes it, who's administering it, if it's the family, facility staff, family, healthcare surrogate, or if the patient takes it themselves. And then any comments you can write about this med, you can write here. Just be aware these comments do flow to the orders, so be careful what you do comment about. And if you don't want it to flow to the orders, make sure you don't enter that comment here. You do have the ability to track what pharmacy fills the prescription, if it was a prescription. If you notify the physician, you can choose who notified or which physician you notified. And then approved by, you can pick your name out of that drop-down box. Now, if the 480, if this is a new patient or a recerted patient and the 485 is still opened, or clinical update orders, any order that meds will flow to, then this will all flow to that automatically. Now, if the 485 has already been done, sent and received, and this med was added, 2 weeks after or halfway through the episode, then you do have the ability to create an interim order out of this. What this will do is just pull all of this information over to a medication order for you automatically, so you don't have to double document or anything like that. So you do have the ability to create an interim order. If you have more than one med to add, you can hit save and add. But on the last one, be sure and hit this save and close, because if you hit save and add, you don't have any additional information. You do have required fields that now you can't satisfy. So always on the last med, hit save and close. I do recommend if you're entering a lot of medications, I'd only add about 5 at a time instead of trying to add all 20, because if something happened, your device died or anything weird happened, then you could lose all the other meds that you put in there. So I just recommend that. You don't need to do that. For certain meds, yeah.
Brendan, I just have a question. What if you accidentally hit save and add, but you didn't have anything to add? What would you do then?
And what I recommend, what I used to do whenever I would accidentally do that, is I'd go ahead and just add another med, and then as soon as I hit save and close, then I'd delete it. If you hit cancel, then initially you won't see those meds show up. Initially, they will show up, but it doesn't work automatically like as fast as it does when you just hit save and close and you have your meds in there. So they'll eventually show up. But what clinicians have done, and I see happen, is they'll go ahead and that same situation will happen. They'll cancel out of here, then they'll go back in to add the meds again. Then they end up being in there duplicated. So to make it easier, I would just add a fake med and then go right in there and delete it as soon as I added it. That way you can, otherwise, as long as you guys refresh your screens and stuff, those meds will show up. It may take a minute. I wouldn't waste your time putting them back in again. Just make sure they do show up, and then if not, then you can add them in. Like I said, if you just add a fake one just to get it in there, the bare minimum information, then it's a little bit faster to correct.
Brendan, can we just pause for Brendan, can I pause for just a couple of seconds here?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Brendan.
Oh, no problem. All right. I just want you guys to be aware of it, because I've had, support calls on the back end with that being an issue. So, and that's what usually it is. They just add a med and can't satisfy these asterisks. There are meds that will not be in this drop-down box in the lexicon drug database, such as oxygen. Compounded meds may or may not be in there. It just depends on, if it's manufactured that way, but usually not. And then there may be wound care supplies that you guys need to add to the med profiles that may not be in here. So I typed in oxygen. Oxygen is the #1 example I use, because we always have to add it to the med profile, but it is not considered a medication from any drug database. So if you were to type in oxygen, you would see similar spelling meds, but you will not find oxygen. So in that case, you can either just click off that drop-down box or don't even hit the drop-down to start with, because you know oxygen's not going to be in there, and then just start overriding this information. And you can finish filling everything out if needed. And then when you hit save and close, it will tell you this warning. It's going to say the medication you entered cannot be found in the medication database. Click here to add an unknown medication to the encounter. And so that's what you're going to have to do for oxygen and some of those other meds. And then it gives you another warning up here at the top. Warning, adding this medication will disable warnings and interaction information. That's going to only refer to this one med. So there will not be interactions information for anything you override. There will also not be any other information such as patient education, which I'm fixing to show you guys. So you'll hit save and close anyway, and then it will be added to your encounter. And you can kind of tell they've been overridden because there's no alerts icons in the alerts column, and there's no printer icon because we have no information about this from the database. So that's how you're going to override a med. So if it's a legitimate medication, try to pick it out of that drop-down box. Make sure it's the exact medication type, and then you can get the dosage and stuff in there. But then you'll get your alerts, and I'll go through those in a second. There's the ability to add medication kits. This is more for the hospice, but they can choose which kit they're going to use, and they can add an entire, a whole bunch of meds at one time. So they enter the information the same way they would a single med, but it's all going to have the same start date, the same entry type, et cetera, for every one of those meds. There's the ability to print the medication profile. If you guys clicked on that, you could include the drug interactions or only the major drug interactions. You can include inactive meds, classifications, pharmacies, address, patient's date of birth, et cetera. And you can even just filter to only the meds that have a start date greater than or equal to the date you put in this field. And then you can just hit export, and it'll be your med profile here with all the information you chose to add to it. There's an approved medication profile. Your administrators may ask you to do this. When you go in the house, you reconcile the meds, make sure there's no issues, and make corrections if needed. Then you do have the ability to do the approved medication profile. And then all you have to do, by the way, instead of trying to pick your name from the drop-down box and sort through all that, if you just hit enter approval signature, it'll bring your signature box up. Choose accept, and it's going to know who you are. So that's a little shortcut you guys can do. You can add additional comments about this, approving this profile, any changes you may have addressed or whatever. And then you have the option to create an interim order for the major drug interactions if you click this checkbox right here. And then hit save. What that'll end up doing is if there is an approval history, you're going to see an approval history drop-down box. And then you'll be able to click on that, and they can see who approved it on what date. And if they click on that name and date, they can, again, export that profile with all the information they want included. And it's a snapshot of what that profile was at the time you approved it. So it's a good audit trail, and it's a good way of making sure clinicians are addressing meds and reconciling them during the visit. So you'll see that. There's also the fax medication link. This medication profile can be faxed, again, including all this information that you want. Export that, and it will bring you to basically a fax cover page where you can enter the attention to, the fax number, and then any text for this cover page. And then you're also going to see the medication list itself. You can click on that. It'll download it if you wanted to double check it before you sent it. And then you did send fax, and that would go to whoever you sent that to. So if they get admitted to a facility, you can just easily send it to them. The other thing, when you first come to this profile tab, it is going to default to the active medicines. This active over here usually is right next to the word status, but I've increased my screen size, so it moved it over. You can leave it at active, or if you wanted to look at all the meds or just the inactive meds, you'd be able to look at all that information or filter it appropriately. There's also the mass inactivation that you guys can use if needed. And that's what it's going to do is you can inactivate every med. The only thing is it's going to have the same end date for every single one of those meds. And so, again, a little bit more of a hospice thing. There's drug-to-drug interaction, which is going to have your moderate, major. It's going to tell you the severity level in between what two drugs. If you hover over the little action item or the little icon next to that, it tells you what that interaction information is. And this is going to be medical terminology. There is also these alerts. The little yellow triangles are going to be your warnings for that medication. It'll have different sound-alike, look-alike issues, disease-related concerns, other warnings, and then a ton of reference material. So out of 7 pages, 6 of it's reference material. And this, again, is medical terminology. The orange icons, these are going to be your food interactions for that specific med. It'll tell you what foods to avoid or not change in your diet, in your intake. So it'll give you that information there. Then the other thing you got, there's these little icons over here to the far right. I call them action item menu icons. If you hover over it, it gives you a little pop-up sub-menu. And this pop-up showed up down here. Normally, it's going to be right next to that. This is where you can view the side effects for that med, the pharmacology for that med. Those two are in medical terms. And then the patient education in English and Spanish. And this is in layman's terms that most patients would understand. So you can print this out. There's a little printer icon here, or you can do a screen print or a browser print. But this is what you can give your patients, or even if you taught on this, you can highlight and put this in your narrative if you needed to. The only other thing, if you needed to change a dose, if you clicked on an existing med, or if you needed to discontinue it, you can hit change or discontinue. If you're changing a dose, you'll, of course, change the entry type to change, and then change medication dosage, and then enter the new dosage here. What that'll end up doing is from the new start date is it's going to end date the old dosage as of the day before the start date of the new dosage. So it'll do it automatically in one swoop, so you don't have to discontinue one med, re-add a new med. It'll do it all for you. And we're kind of running out of time here. It looks like we have a caregiver meeting here in a minute. I need to show you real fast order types and how to document a visit. The document a visit is pretty simple. You'll click on the visit on your home screen, and you're going to choose to add a page service note assessment. And you guys won't see the OASIS option, or shouldn't, based on your role, but you would always choose a regular assessment and then the service note type. It's going to be the service code you're going to see here, but again, that should be done during scheduling, so you shouldn't have to address that. And then the service note type, just pick which one's appropriate for your discipline, and then hit continue.
There's one for PTA.
I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry, Brendan, I didn't realize we're on mute.
Oh, sorry.
Do you have PT assistants in the room as well as LVNs? So I was just letting them know.
Yeah. Their notes will be discipline specific. It will say PTA routine visit for PTAs. LPNs, it'll just be the skilled nurse routine visit. OTs or COTAs. COTAs will have a routine, or be a COTA routine visit. And then, of course, your primary, the PT, OT, ST, they have evals and re-evals. So the note types are going to be discipline specific. Just for the sake of time, I'm only going to show you this one. But just know your sections would be related to your disciplines, et cetera. But the functionality is going to be identical. So up here at the top, you do see that we have those different tabs. There's the medications tab and an orders and care needs tab. This orders tab, it will tell you the verbiage in your order, the order type, and the frequencies and durations. But it's kind of outdated because now we have this orders and care needs tab. and you can actually write orders and view them and everything from here. So that's, and again, the medications and orders tab are mirror images of the orders tab on the, and medications tab on the patient encounters, and it's all simultaneous as well. So this is where, you know, when you first get to your note, this is your time in. You typically won't know your time out at this point, so you're just going to kind of move forward. There is clinical data, if it exists, which will tell you some pretty pertinent information before you treat your patient, such as their allergies, functional limitations, activities permitted, mental status, and advanced directive information. So typically you just put your time in and hit next. Now anytime you hit the next or previous buttons in your note, it's going to save that information and send it to us, and then move you to the next section. The next section, your you know, PT is going to set up interventions and goals for you guys, for the PTAs. Skilled nursing, their RN is going to do it for the LPNs, et cetera. So when you get into your note, you're going to have the patient-specific interventions right here under the task actions. And what you would do is, you know, complete the task, mark it as completed. You also have not applicable, this visitor, patient, caregiver refused. Pick whichever is appropriate, and then any comments about that intervention or that task that you did, you know, how they tolerated it, why you weren't able to complete it, maybe they ended up in pain and could no longer proceed, or maybe they got short of breath, things like that. And then also if the patient and caregiver refused, you can document that information. Now these are required fields, so you're going to have to address all of them and document towards them. And then again, when you hit next, now you're just going to see the goals section too. So this column right here is going to show you your goals. And then you can address whether they met it, in process, not met, and then document towards the progression of those goals. How far towards that goal have they made it? And you can also view previous goals. If there are any service notes that are in a complete status, you'll get that information up here, and you can actually view what they documented previously, which may help you determine how far they've really made it towards a goal. And then the vitals are, there's the patient identifier section. There is copy previous data links in some of these. If you click on that, if there is a note that has that same section with data in it, it's in an approved status, then you're going to get a list of all those notes here. And you can pick your discipline or, you know, whatever. You can pick any note to actually pull it from and hit copy and continue. And it automatically pulls that into your note. It'll pre-mark it for you. And it depends on what, you know, that's customizable. We can turn it on and off for any section or question. For the vitals, if you entered a vital outside the range, this is that icon that you're going to get. And if you hover over it, it tells you what the range should be. So again, it doesn't give you any errors, but it will give you a heads up so you know that you need to document and call a physician. The other options that you have in this note, you can switch your section. Instead of hitting next 100 times, you can just come up here to where it says change section and move to another section. You can see, it may be hard to see on your end, but the patient identifier and vital sign, the font is green instead of black. That means information was saved and entered into that section. Doesn't mean it was complete or accurate or anything, but it just says something was saved there. So if you were to have to save and close your note and come back in and edit it, you could see kind of where you picked up. You can basically pick up where you left off, and that'll kind of help you in that aspect. You can also view previous service notes. If they're in a completed status, you're going to get those here, and you can just click on the note, and it'll bring up their note in a PDF format so you can view the previous documentation. So this was the previous note that we didn't fill out. The other things you have are preview service notes. This is your service note. It'll do the same thing as it'll show a PDF format of your service note, which is a little bit easier to scroll through, so you can see if you missed any information. Then there's the apply on demand sections. We strip out all the wound care documentation out of the service notes because it could be so lengthy with however many wounds your patients may have. So we do what we call apply on demand, and there's other sections in here too. There's diabetic foot exam, the IV therapy, lab, and then all of your wound. So if you needed to use one of these, you just pick which one and hit save, what wounds apply and how many you need. Now, if the previous clinician had added on-demand wound sections, they're automatically going to be carry over to your service notes as well. So these weren't in here before, but now they are. The Integument Assessment. This is where you can edit a wound assessment or just view the wound assessment. What that'll do, if you click on View, you'll see that the picture of the human body, the wound label. If it's green, it means it's been marked as healed, and if it's red, it's still an active wound. And you'll see that information here. Now, guys, and I sincerely apologize, we have another meeting in 4 minutes, and we didn't get to go over the orders, all the different order types and how to write them. I do believe, and I'll talk to Molly about this, we're probably going to have to set up an additional training. It wouldn't take more than about 30 minutes at the most, and then we can do any follow-up questions because I'm sure you guys have some questions that what we've went over so far. So this is as far as I can get right now, and I'm just going to make a note here.
Okay, Brandon, we'll be in contact as to when the next session will be.
Yeah, absolutely, and if we can get it, of course, this week, you know, before the go live, that'll be amazing. But yeah, and it's all I got to do is go over order types, and it's not going to take too long to do that. I just ran out of time today.
And we'll need to go over, you know, where the wound pictures will be and how to access those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those wound pictures are going to be under the actual documents tab and the patient encounter. So they'll have to go there and view the images from the patient encounter there. But I can go through that and show you. But all right, well, you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brendan.
All right, thank you very much. Bye.